we're in a pretty cool time right now just because, with eclipse season ending, right? Yesterday there was a solar eclipse. It wasn't really visible in the US, but, nonetheless, we still had it. And now today is the 22nd of September, but it is the autumnal equinox, which is when day and night are equal. And we're essentially making the transition, into like the darker months of the year. Super symbolic for a bunch of different reasons, right? When you look across like mythologies and stuff like that, it's always represented. Just in general, the equinoxes, obviously in the past, less so now, but it's still a prominent thing. It's seen as a harvest time as well, so this is kind of where you're actually reaping what you've sown, the past year-ish. One of my favorite representations is through the story of Persephone, because this is now, this marks the time when she goes through her descent into the underworld. And I think it represents a lot of what we go through in a way, because as we get into these darker months, right, when we head into the winter for the northern hemisphere, there's that energy of like, I don't want to say seasonal depression, but that's how I would describe it, in the past. Like, there's just not as much sun. You're cooped up inside, for me at least, out in the weather's just not as nice. So there's a lot more time to be introspective. There's a lot more time to just kind of be in the shadows and working through the shadows. This year, though, as opposed to others, it feels a little different. And I don't know if it's because I understand the shadow a little bit better, or just because I feel that things are really changing in a lot of ways that is hopeful for me. However, I know just how important it is to have a shadow, to do the kind of work to understand your shadow, because like the year, like we have seasons, it's just an aspect of ourselves that you can't get rid of, no matter how much you try to suppress it or pretend it doesn't exist. And so this is like the time to really go through the process of being reborn. Every year we go through that whole like death and rebirth cycle. This is really when you can prune away the things that you don't want to bring in with you through the rest of the year. I think I've been seeing on TikTok, like, this kind of time period is getting known as the great lock-in, because I think a lot of people kind of go into their own hermit mode, like I was saying. But it's really a special time. It's not always going to be sunshine and rainbows. Nothing is ever always sunshine and rainbows, right? However, if you can find little bits of sunshine through the darkness, through the darker periods, you'll acknowledge that there is some sense of happiness always to be had, regardless of the situation. And so as we step into like this darker period of the year, acknowledge the fact that you carry the sun within you. And so if there is a darker day than others, you can always radiate your light a little bit more, and not just brighten up your life, but brighten up the lives around you as well.